don't we start by talking about how you got involved with transformational discipleship?
I think the very first thing was my conversation with Jason Jans, who is the CEO of Cross Purpose and
Yes.
pastor of Providence Bible Church. Me and him met at a wedding, and we talked about my aspirations of being a youth leader or leading in youth ministry. And he invited me to do that with Cross Purpose, but he did that by setting up a mentoring relationship with you.
Okay.
And the very first thing that he did was hand me a draft of a book called Building Cathedrals
Okay.
that had the author Ted Travis on it. And so
Okay.
this was prior to me actually meeting you. And he told me, hey, read this book, and then I'm going to introduce you to the author.
Okay.
And I began journeying through Building Cathedrals, and it was a very captivating book.
Okay.
And it made me really start thinking about, hey, who am I as a youth leader, and how do I want to lead youth?
Were there other things that stood out to you at that time before we started working together?
Yes, the one thing that I can recall, Ted, is reading through your story when you were talking about identity things.
Okay.
And you,
Okay.
had mentioned the pastor calling you out and
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
hey, why are you
Yeah.
talking white, or why,
Yeah, yeah,
why
yeah,
are you
yeah.
whitewashed? And do you
Yeah.
realize you're black?
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah,
that was
yeah.
the words that you used in the book. And
Yeah.
you said that challenged your identity to the core. And then
Yeah.
you begin to talk about, hey, leaders need to understand their story.
Yeah.
Kind of speaking from James 1. And really journeying in your past and dealing with some of those issues. And one of the issues that for me that surfaced up was my issue with my father.
Okay.
And I realized, hey, many of the kids that I'm going to be serving are fatherlessness.
Okay. Yeah.
And they lack positive adult role models in their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And I can only take them as far as I've gone in my own story as relates here to my own issues with my father.
Okay.
And so it really helped me to kind of process some of the anger, even hatred, and sadness that I had as relates here to having an absent father in my life.
Yeah.
And so I
Okay.
had a 3-hour conversation with him before
Wow.
I actually accepted the Cross Purpose position
Okay.
about some of the issues that I had with he and I's relationship and him not being involved. And there was a lot of tears, there were a lot of shouting, and then there was a lot of anger. But at the end, I felt there was restoration because we came together and we both said, hey, listen, despite the flaws and despite my absence, I love you.
Yeah.
And we love each other. And then
That's
we can
exciting.
continue to build our relationship from there. So it was almost like a fresh start that I had with my father, though I knew our relationship wasn't going to be a father type son relationship. We
Yeah.
can still have a relationship.
Yeah.
And I no longer have to be bitter towards him.
Tell me about your experience with transformational discipleship, and particularly with kind of the changes that you went through.
And so I think one of the processes that we went through was a process chart. What is the scope of the ministry?
Yeah.
And what are the activities?
Yeah.
And then I'm a basketball guy, so I said, hey, I want to do some basketball, I want to do some entertainment stuff, and I want to do some leadership stuff.
Okay.
But then as we started going through chapter by chapter in training every week of building cathedrals, I realized, like, I want to do that. I want to
Okay.
experience what Ted experienced when he wrote this book. And
Okay.
so I scrapped every thought that I had as it relates here to youth ministry and said, I want to do everything that was written in this book.
Now, I know, there are going to be people looking at this that have their ministry, and they're hearing you say, I scrapped everything. What did you gain? What did you gain from, in a sense, you were starting over? Does a person have to start over in order to do transformational discipleship? And if so, to what extent?
I don't think a person necessarily has to start over, but they have to realize that you have to implement the principles of transformational discipleship in the ministry in order for youth to really experience transformation and growth.
Okay.
And so for me, coming into transformational discipleship, I realized I had no clue on how to run a youth ministry. And I needed direction, and I needed the coaching and the tools to be able to do so. So it made perfect sense for me to say, hey, listen, it's okay for me to set aside some ideas that I had or thoughts that I had about youth ministry and actually run with something that actually works, but then to shape it around my uniqueness of who I was as a leader.
Okay.
And so, no, you don't have to scrap what you're doing, but you do need to infuse the principles because that's what invokes change in the kids and as well as myself as a leader too.
When you think about implementing principles, what did you implement that was perhaps something you hadn't thought of before, or something you had gotten from transformational discipleship that says, I need to be focused on this?
One of the biggest things was what you said to me was let relationship drive the process.
Okay.
And so, even in a sense today, I'm still trying to discover the full meaning of that. But
Yeah.
I think it was one of the principles as it relates to how I was actually entering into relationship with each student we engaged in transformational discipleship with the Switch Up project. And so I think one of the biggest thing was uniqueness, define their uniqueness so we can maximize it for its use. And so it allowed me to not focus on the problems that the kids were bringing, but focus on the kid as a person.
Yeah.
And really help, and really look at them as far as for who God has created them to be.
Okay.
And then listen to what their aspirations was as where they desired to be as young leaders.
Okay.
And things that they were excited about, what their ideas were. And then one thing that we talked about is as they share their ideas, my job was to now put meat on those bones. So help to materialize their ideas. So as I'm listening to them and they're engaging and they're talking about their felt needs, I'm meeting their felt needs in the ministry context, but then at the same time in their leadership experience, in the boundaries that we created, they talked about their ideas of how they wanted to lead in ministry or in that perspective, and then me helping that come to fruition.
Okay.
And I think that's where the kids came to life at, because they actually saw their ideas implemented and carried out throughout the process of transformational discipleship experience.